Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at the Grow Asia Hackathon kickoff event. We actually kicked this off last week in Jakarta. So we're actually running two parallel hackathons and joining them back in Singapore. And I think Paul and myself, we will go through with you what the process actually is. So thank you for choosing to spend your Tuesday night with us. So today we have invited our very special guests from our partners, MUFG, Corteva, Ferrero, and Enterprise Singapore to share with you the challenges and also inspire you in actually coming out with the solutions for smallholder farmers. But to kick us off tonight, let me invite Paul from Grow Asia to say a few words. Paul?
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're absolutely honoured to have so many people here willing to give up their Tuesday evening, willing to give up their weekend to innovate and come up with new ideas to make a difference in the lives of smallholder farmers across ASEAN. So thank you very much for joining us. So why are we running a hackathon around innovation on small farms in ASEAN? Well, firstly, the scale of the opportunity. There are 71 million small farms in ASEAN. That's 71 million households that rely on a small plot to feed their family, send their kids to school, and get by with health costs. So these farms are important, and these farms are important for three reasons. One is these farms are the backbone of food security in ASEAN. 80% of the foods that we eat in ASEAN are grown on a small farm. The ASEAN agricultural landscape is typified by the small family farm. When we innovate, when we come up with creative ideas to help small farmers thrive, we're helping address food security in ASEAN, and that's important to us even here in Singapore. The next reason why it's really important to think about the role of small farms and how to improve their productivity is the environment. Right across ASEAN, large swathes of forests have been cleared to make way for agriculture. If we keep doing that, we're removing one of the largest carbon sinks in the world. We must make better use of the agricultural land that has already been cleared. And finally, when we work with small farms, we have an opportunity to address poverty. Many of the poorest families in ASEAN farm a small plot, a small rice field, a small cornfield. So when we step into the shoes of a family who's farming a small farm in ASEAN, when we help innovate and create our new ideas for them, we address three really, really important issues. So what can we do? What are the challenges on a small farm in ASEAN? There are loads of them. There's lots of issues that we can solve, lots of issues that we can deal with, but I want to highlight four of them to you this evening. The first is a learning opportunity. Small farms typically yield much lower amounts than larger farms. And that's because they don't always use the same technology, they don't always use the same techniques that you could use to enhance productivity. And a lot of that comes down to learning. When should I fertilize? What fertilizers should I use? What's really cool about digital technology is that for the first time, we have an opportunity to solve this problem at scale. When we send out a government extension worker or an extension worker from one of the agribusiness companies to each farm, they might get to each farm once in a season. And often farmers don't see an extension worker for many, many seasons because the cost of four-wheel drives, motorbikes, the wages themselves, 71 million farms, it just doesn't add up. But with digital, we can provide customized advice when farmers need it at the right point in the crop cycle every day. Finance. When a smallholder farmer buys a hybrid seed or a fertilizer at the start of the cropping season, they're often paying between 40 and 100% per annum on that loan. What does that mean? Farmers get really conservative about what they buy, and they buy the absolute minimum of inputs, and that's really harming productivity. The next thing that farmers are looking for is labour saving. As farmers in ASEAN age, many of their children are moving to the cities. There's just a real shortage of labour, and we really do need labour-saving devices for small farms. And finally, we need better market access. And this is where digital can play a really important role, because digital's fantastic at connecting buyers and sellers and making that whole experience much more efficient and much lower cost. So our corporate partners have put together 4 challenge statements for you to solve. And these challenge statements are exciting for a number of reasons. One is they make a real difference in the lives of small family farms in ASEAN. But 2, these are burning issues for the corporate partners that are bringing this hackathon together. The ideas that you bring and create in this hackathon don't die at the end of the hackathon. You've got fantastic corporate partners for whom these challenge statements are really very real. These challenge statements confront their business and their staff and their leadership every day. They need solving, they need new ideas. That's why we put this hackathon on. So what's the first challenge statement? The first challenge statement relates to the cash flow of small farms. When you're running a small farm, it's super hard to manage your cash flow. You've got to buy fertilizer, crop protection products, labor, but it's complicated by the fact that, one, you're typically very poor, so you've got very little capital base to actually buy anything, and 2, your household expenses and your farm expenses are all wound up with one another. And what we see is we see a lot of very poor financial planning. These farms are not typically run in the same way as you'd run a business with a cash flow, P&L. They're run in a very ad hoc way, and planning is not always great. So this first challenge statement is great for those of you that have worked in marketing. Maybe you've got a background in advertising, behavioral change. This is a great challenge to sink your teeth into because it's about behavioral change. It's about the way people think and plan. So it's a great challenge if that's your background. The next challenge statement relates to finance. I said before that a lot of farmers are paying ridiculously high interest rates for their inputs. That harms the sales of inputs and it harms farmer productivity. But what the banks are discovering is that if they have a direct relationship with each farm, it really doesn't work. 2 problems. The first is the acquisition cost, because they have to go from farm to farm to farm to try and acquire that customer, and they're typically very small loans. And 2, it's really, really hard to assess the risk. And that's why we're starting to look with this hackathon at the role of intermediaries. So intermediaries is the word to look for if you want to take on this challenge statement. How can a retailer, the person that's selling products to a farmer, or a trader, the person that's buying products from the farmer, act as like an agent or a broker for a financing organization? So instead of having a direct relationship between the bank and the farmer, let's start to get more creative and start to think about the roles of intermediaries. So if you want to take on that challenge statement, this is a great one if you've got a background in finance and in tech, and you want to think around new business models for finance that are not just directly relating with the farmer, but starting to think about some of those other actors in the value chain and the role they could play with respect to finance. Okay. The third challenge statement, and we talked before about the importance of dealing with increasing labour costs. 2 really cool technologies that are out there at the moment that can deal with labour costs are drones and smart irrigation. So drones typically for spraying crops, imaging crops, a whole lot of other uses, and smart irrigation to help particularly around rice in terms of making water available to the crop. The word to look for if you're interested in this challenge statement is business models. You don't need to build a new drone. You don't need to build a new smart irrigation system. There's lots of those already out there. But can you innovate around a business model to make these technologies accessible to small farms? Can you look at leasing, hiring, using these apps for distributing assets across multiple farms? So we're really, if your background's in business strategy and planning, and you want to think about making these technologies accessible at small farms, this is the challenge for you. Finally, the last challenge relates to traceability. And this is a really hot topic amongst a whole bunch of businesses that buy from small farms at the moment. How to identify where my product's coming from? How to identify where my product's coming from a food safety point of view, from a sustainability point of view, from a certification point of view. And specifically, we've got some really interesting technology coming around tagging. So the farmer can actually tag a palm oil bunch, tag a bag of rice, and use that tag throughout the value chain to identify where that product is coming from. And later on, we're going to have a panel from the corporate partners that are involved in this hackathon. They're going to give you a little bit more detail on these challenge statements. But that's an overview of the 4 challenge statements. So what your team's going to need to do is select one of those 4. As I said, what's really cool about these challenge statements is they're not a university assignment. They're not a little bit of fun. This is an opportunity over a weekend to build something that's meaningful for smallholder farmers, and we've got the partners to take your idea forward. With the corporate partners involved in the hackathon, we've got companies, large companies that can take your idea, not just to trial, but to scale. I might ask Derek to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Paul. So our next speaker is from Golden Agri Resources, which is a world leader in applying innovation to the value chain and also partnering with innovators. I would like to now invite Anita from Golden Agri Resources to talk about smallholder needs and the value of tech.
Thank you. I have no slides, so I'm okay. So, good evening, everybody. Golden Agri is the world's 2nd largest palm oil company, so I'm glad that you're all sat here and away from the food, so you can't throw it at me now. But we are also really very keenly aware of the challenges that face smallholders. They make up a significant proportion of our supply chain, and we are actively involved in trying to realize solutions to those challenges. And also within our business more broadly, we appreciate the value that tech and digital has to offer to innovate in agriculture. Because I foolishly agreed to join you this evening when I was in Chicago last week and jet-lagged, I didn't quite get the memo about excuse me, the opportunity for slides, so you have to put up with me. And hopefully I will provide you with some insight and inspiration as to what farming looks like at our end of the value chain, which is the dirt side of things. So Golden Agri has about 500,000 hectares of plantations all across Indonesia. We run 46 mills that process the fresh fruit bunches that we harvest every day. Palm trees are harvested on a 7-day cycle, and you can harvest them all year round. And once they're planted, they're there for 25 years. So if you're a smallholder farmer and you decide to go into palm, it is not a get-rich-quick decision. For the first 4 years, that tree will deliver nothing in terms of value for you. It takes 4 years for the tree to mature in such a way that you can actually start selling fruit. Anyone who tells you palm's a way to get rich quick knows nothing about palm, right? But once they've made that decision, they've locked that decision in for 25 years. So if they buy bad seed, if they plant it badly, if they fertilize it at the wrong time, if they don't handle their pesticide management well, if they don't know how to prune the tree to maximize productivity, if they don't have access to all of this information and knowledge, they are going to have poor returns on their investment. And those poor returns last a generation. It has never been more important for us to access technology to be able to educate and improve the way farmers farm. And in palm oil in particular, about 40% of the production comes from smallholder farmers. It has never been more important to improve the outcomes in those communities. Why? Not just because their incomes suffer. Currently, smallholder palm oil farmers grow about 1 to 2, maybe 3 tons per hectare. On our farms, we're achieving yields of 5 tons per hectare. So they're doing significantly worse, right? The national average in Indonesia is about 4.5. So still very bad, right? They're 40% of the production. But also, when they do badly in that area, it has an impact on our environment. In order to earn more, having locked in poor performance in palm, they're going to open up new areas of land. And that means fire and haze for those of us who live here in Singapore and in the region, because smallholder farmers traditionally use fire as a means of clearing their land. And it means deforestation, impacts on wildlife populations, orangutans, etc. It is generally just bad, okay? Bad for income, bad for livelihoods, bad for the environment, bad for Singapore. So we need a solution, right? We're all about the self-interest. How can digital help us? Well, we've been experimenting with digital and technology and how it can help innovate in our own business for some time. Yes, we use things like drones to check out how our conservation areas are being managed. It helps us more quickly identify encroachment into those forests that we're striving to protect than sending a team of people to walk the perimeter, right? It helps us identify hotspots and fire spots more rapidly so that we can deploy in a more precise way teams of firefighters to address those challenges. And the same technology that helps us identify fire hotspots in concessions has helped us to identify historical data and trends around fire to figure out which are our most fire-prone areas so that we can work precisely with those villages and communities where fire happens most frequently to help them prevent fire more rapidly and deploy different kinds of farming techniques. So enabling them to access machinery that they borrow from us instead of using fire to open up new land, for example. Sorry, froggy throat today. We're also interested in how through technology, we can get a better handle on our supply chain. So I mentioned we have 500,000 hectares. It sounds like a lot, right? But actually, that's only 40% of the palm oil that we trade globally. 60% comes from other people, right? From what we call third-party suppliers. This is the language that we use. Those third-party suppliers are a mix of really big companies that look a bit like us, small or medium enterprises that look like more like a national company, if you like. They may have a mill and an estate of several thousand hectares attached to it. And also many, 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 many smallholder farmers who are working areas of about 2 hectares or so. We had no idea, as recently as 4 years ago, just how many smallholder farmers are in our supply chain. And hand on heart, I still cannot tell you today, out of all of the oil that we sell globally, I cannot put a precise number on the number of smallholders who are growing it. Because we've never mapped them, we've never traced them. Many are still, sadly, undocumented and vulnerable because they don't have legal land title. It's a huge challenge, right? So we made a commitment in 2015 that we wanted to have a fully traceable supply chain. And we see traceability as a fundamental first step to being able to transform the practices in our sector. If you don't know who you're buying from, you can't understand what challenges they're facing or how they're performing, because not everyone's bad. You know, some of them are doing very well, but you can't know that either unless you map them. How do we map loads and loads of people in our supply chain? You have to use technology, right? That's what all those groovy databases and Excel spreadsheets that I really don't understand are for. I'm hoping that many of you in here are Excel and database experts, so you can help us out with this. So we've been trialing different systems to encourage people to provide us with a basic set of data that covers things like a geolocation, identification of their site, do they have legal title, are they certified to one of the many certification systems that we recognize, if they're a farmer or an estate, what is their yield per hectare, what kinds of volumes are they buying if they're a mill owner from these farmers. And we've been trialing different systems. We like to say that we're system agnostic. I also consider it the Tinder approach to identifying which is your technology of choice, right? Sometimes we swipe left, sometimes it's right. We've tested a few things out. We've dated a few. Hasn't always worked out for us. We've stuck around with a couple. No one's laughing at the Tinder joke. Wow, you guys are a serious crowd. I got to tell you, I've played that particular joke at a proper sustainability conference and got proper laughs. You guys are tough. I feel really bad for the panel. Good luck. Okay, I know there's no slides or anything, but come on. The point is, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and you also need to think practically as well as creatively and innovatively, right? Because when we've tested certain solutions, and believe me, I have been pitched at by all the big traceability players who are out there. There are a lot of solutions that have been developed in Silicon Valley equivalents, either in the US or Europe, that are based on the idea that everyone has a smartphone, everyone has 5G super-fast broadband access, and everybody is digitally literate. When I am out in Ketapang in West Kalimantan and I'm standing in the kebun, what we call our farms, in the executive mess, it sounds fancier than it is, trust me, and I've got my mobile phone standing on my tippy toes in what I know to be the sweet spot, right, looking for the single bar that will enable me to send a text WhatsApp. Your very fancy, high-profile, whiz-bang flash, super fast app is no use to me whatsoever. However, do not let that dissuade you. There are lots of ways that we can aggregate data around nodes for upload. There are lots of still very powerful things that we can do for farmers using 2G phones that aren't smart, right? But you need to be both practical and creative. The shiniest new toy, and I love a shiny new toy, I don't think I've met an app I haven't tried out, is useless to the guy with the old Nokia, right? But if you can find a way that that same guy with his old Nokia, which he understands how to use, which was my dad up until about 3 months ago, you know, if you can get some information to him via text, it can be tremendously powerful, right? Another real-world reality check for you. We've been partnering with people like Geotraceability, working with mills that supply us, and providing smartphones and GPS devices in order for them to go out in the field. We've been working through agents and brokers, those notorious middlemen who pick up all the fruit from small farmers and extort them. Right? These guys are actually quite useful because they do often provide fertilizer, pesticide, finance. They're a jack of all trades, and they are an entry point. If you don't have a direct contract, we don't have a direct contract with many of these smallholders. You have to work the middlemen, right? So we worked with them, convinced them that we weren't there to take all their farmers away from them, and we provided them with tools and training on this device to be able to go out and collect data. And we couldn't understand why weren't they giving us the data? Why was it taking so long? What was going on? You can actually watch this video on our website, should you be interested. It's goldenagri.com.sg, just in case you were wondering. And the guy said, you know, this is a really expensive piece of kit, and usually when we're out in the farm, it's raining. We didn't want it to break. We thought we'd get in trouble. Now, you and I drop our smartphone, crack the thing, down the road, $20, new screen, all's good. I don't even think about my phone in that way. For them, it's precious, and it's new, and it's valuable, and it's also strange, and sometimes a little bit scary. So you also need to design thinking about how do you get people, having been given this magical device, to actually practically use it, right? I find this a fascinating challenge in my everyday life, right? I find this really interesting because farmers want to learn. They are business people. We tend to patronize them a lot. Please don't. They are business people and they want to be successful, right? They want to learn. They want access to finance. They want access to markets. They want to deliver a better future for their children. These are all wants that we generally share. Given the youthfulness of this audience, probably a lot of you aren't worried about the children thing yet, but with the lack of laughing at the Tinder, maybe. So this is real, right? What I would ask for you today, and then I'm going to shut up and let much more expert people give you some insight to the challenges that you're presented with. What I'd like to leave you with is we buy from hundreds of thousands of farmers and business owners across Indonesia. And we have investments in other places as well that share this same challenge. How do we better connect smallholders to finance so that they can run their businesses well? How can we teach them how to be better farmers? Because actually we need food. We all like eating. I saw you guys out there having some food. We all like to eat. We don't very often think about the people who grow that for us. We all like our environment to be clean and green and healthy, and we have all seen the reports that talk about how fragile our planet is proving to be. I fundamentally believe that digital and technology in the agricultural sector is overdue, that our sector is ripe for innovation and disruption, and we just need bright minds who also have a sense of the practical to help us identify solutions to these challenges that you've been set. Trust me, the right idea will be taken up by businesses like mine because we are literally searching for these answers every day. I wish you all very good luck. I hope many of you will sign up, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for that insight into that key point, which is that smallholders can be innovators, can also entrepreneurs. And continuing on that theme, I'd like to invite Elizabeth from Corteva. She's...
Clicker. Thank you. Good evening. Can I ask how many of you know Corteva? Good, I see a few hands. Well, I'm hoping this side of the room will know it. So if you'll indulge me, can you show the video first? Thank you.
Humans have been farming for over 10,000 years. The birth of agriculture is what took us out of the caves and into civilization. But after all these years, the way we've farmed isn't the way we'll have to farm. You see, in 2050, we'll need to feed nearly 10 billion people. For that to happen, we're rethinking how agriculture works. We plant seeds that increase yield at a local level, protect crops with precision, and we use data and analytics to predict the weather and improve crop health. This is the farming of today. Imagine what we'll do tomorrow. We are growing progress. And with this goal in mind, we've made two companies into one. Introducing Corteva Agriscience.
Thank you. So this is Corteva Agriscience. It's Corteva, it's not Corteva, Corteva. And it actually means core and heart. Core is Corteva, is heart, and Teva is the earth or nature. So heart of the earth, heart of nature, that's the name. And really for me, this is the part of the reason I'm here at Corteva today. It's a company that was really designed, if you will, built with this purpose in mind, to enrich the lives of those who produce and those who consume, ensuring progress for generations to come. Very much what some of the things that Anita said about farming, right? That it's the entire value chain. It's from farm to fork. We're a new company that brings together the best of three very big and strong companies. You may know DuPont, Crop Protection, DuPont Pioneer, and Dow AgroScience. And they came together about 3 years ago with an intention to spin. And Dow has already spun off. We will be spinning actually as a brand new pure play agriculture company on June 1st just a matter of days. In fact, on June 3rd, we'll have a whole delegation of employees as well as farmers and other guests that will be ringing the bell on ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange on June 3rd. So, and we'll be trading as CTVA, as Corteva. So I wanted you, first of all, to know who Corteva is. As for me, I'm very new to this industry. In fact, about a year and a half ago, I was doing something completely different. I left Facebook for farming. Now, don't get me wrong, I still can't probably keep something green and growing in my house today, but I did. And I'd like to tell you a little bit why. Now, I spent more than a decade in technology, and most of the time talking to entrepreneurs or startups like you or students, and most of the time it was about, people that wanted to learn and or had an idea for a business and wanted to really build a business, and we promised that with digital tools, you could go from zero to global. Have you heard of that? From startup to global, from zero to global. And it's true. I mean, I met husband and wives or mothers and daughters who were making, let's say, batik clothes at home. And suddenly, because of digital marketing, because they had an online presence, and they created a Facebook page, they were suddenly exporting to 14 different countries around Asia, or even to the United States. And that was exciting to see entrepreneurs grow their businesses overnight. And you can see all the case studies online. We even launched one specific for women, She Means Business, right? To help entrepreneurs, startups, and basically be part of the digital economy. We believe that all entrepreneurs needed, and SMEs, or small and medium enterprises, was access to technology, access to finance, and access to markets. And if they did have those three things, then they would participate in the global digital economy and be prosperous and be part of the global value chains. And the big companies helped that. We did all kinds of capacity building and training and financing programs to help the local SMEs, because they represent 80% of the economy. They were the lifeblood of Asia's economies, right? We all know that story. Somewhere along the way, we forgot the farmers. We forgot the farmers. We forgot the farmers were also entrepreneurs. We forgot that the farm is an enterprise. Sometimes it's a family business, sometimes it's not. But farmers are also entrepreneurs. And yet we did not give them the same kind of capacity building tools and training that we did for all these other SMEs and entrepreneurs in our cities. And so today, when I see what we're doing at Corteva, that's what we're focused on. We're focused on putting the farmer at the heart of what we do, and to think of the farmer as an enterprise, the farm as an enterprise, and to change mindsets. It starts with us thinking of the farmer differently, but it's also us helping the farmers change their mindsets. Now, it might be hard to tell that to a guy who might be in his 50s, who's been farming all his life and is a subsistence farming. But for the next generation, for the farmers' children, then yes, that's what we should be focusing on. So I think it's an exciting time for you to be here. It's an exciting time for us to be part of this hackathon, because it's an opportunity for us to bring agriculture and technology together. We've seen some of the successes in other industries, right? But it's time for farming, for agriculture to be the one to benefit from the same kind of digital technologies that we've seen other industries benefit from. So I'll talk a little bit more about our experience specifically. That's why Corteva is here, and we're very grateful for GrowAsia and Padang to allow us to be part of this, along with our friends from MUFG and Ferrero and Enterprise Singapore. And we're grateful that you're spending Tuesday evening with us, and 2 weekends. We're doing it in Jakarta as well as here in Singapore, because I know it's a big, a generous part of your time to spend the weekend addressing these problems. But I want you to know who is the smallholder farmer we're talking about as you think of developing your solutions. You already heard a lot from Paul and Anita earlier. I'd like to talk, because we're in Singapore, it's kind of hard to think of smallholder farmer sitting here. So how many of you have actually been on a farm, whether in Singapore or anywhere outside of Asia, actually did more than just step on the farm, but actually got your hands dirty, or actually talk to farmers? That's good to know. How come this side of the room always seems to raise their hands more? I'm curious where you guys are from. But let's look at Indonesia, which is where we were for the kickoff just a couple weeks ago. Now, why? And I'm not going to read you, these are some of the background for you to know. But like many of the countries in Asia, agriculture is still a very important part of the economy. As you see, nearly 50 million people, 41% of the labor force still in agriculture in Indonesia. And it's still a very important piece of the economy. While the large plantations tend to be in palm oil or in rubber, the smallholder farms are really the ones that go into the food crops, and especially subsistence farming in rice, for example. And in fact, that's what we tend to focus on right now in Indonesia, because rice security is very important to a growing population like there, especially a young population. And it's a very big country, and despite all the government efforts to address irrigation and better seed quality in rice farming, they still have the challenges of weather that they can't control, as well as resistant pests that attack them. And so here's some example of some of the smallholder farmers. Now, I'm not going to talk to each one of this. I'll tell you a story more and more as we go into the fields, whether we're in Karawang or where we were recently. When we talk to farmers, more than half of them tend to actually be women. So I want to make sure you thought about that as you think of your solutions. Not only are we talking about smallholder farmers in terms of, from an economic perspective, but also from a gender. So when we think of solutions, we need to make sure that they're gender neutral, that both men and women can use them. And in fact, in many ways, technology or digital technology has a way of actually leveling that playing field in a way, especially when you think of access to some of the training programs. But I want you to think about that. And what I do want to do is, if you click on the video link on the title, I'd like them to tell their stories themselves. Didn't copy the video link. Sorry, that was what I was afraid of, that the link wouldn't copy over. No, we can do that later. So the first video worked, and the second video didn't work. Well, see if you can try it. Then, I guess what you're going to try, you have the, okay, if you do that, I'll talk through it first then. What I wanted to say is, and I think Paul alluded to earlier, if you look at the challenge questions, the one that really is, for me, very important, the one on what we call at Corteva farm economics or finance, right? Because when you talk to a smallholder farm, even though, as I said, they think of themselves as a farmer, as a family, as a farmer, they don't necessarily think of themselves as business. As a result, when you think of the way they spend their money, they don't separate what are the business expenses or inputs, costs, for example, from the expenses of the household or the expenses for their family. So whether it's money that they'll spend for the seeds or for the crop protection products versus money that they'll spend for the kids' education or clothing, food at the table, they mix together. So it's very hard for them to know exactly at any given time how much are they making, what kind of profit margins, or even whether it's the right investment decision that they're making. And so one of the things we really feel that's important to empower the farmer to be able to make better informed decisions about his business and where to invest his money is some kind of a solution that allows him to make those decisions. If it's not, yeah. Oh, okay. What? Oh, sorry. Just the Indonesia one. It's a shorter one. Thank you.
Harga-harga obat, pupuk naik. Itu petani yang pertama tantangannya. Potong padinya berhenti. Oh. Ini di mesinnya nggak jalan.
Pendanaan. Iya, pendanaan. Artinya begini, ada misalnya dari rendang ke musim gadu ya, Itu mau dijual untuk operasional harganya murah. Akhirnya kita simpan dulu, sementara modal nggak ada. Nah, seperti itu.
Teknologinya saling harus tahu waktu sih, tepat waktu itu, cara pemupukan sama penyemprotan.
HP untuk komunikasi.
Sama kabar sama gapoktan di desa yang lain sih.
Ya artinya kita selektif aja, nggak semua orang berbicara begini bisa diaplikasikan ke kita menjadi baik, enggak. Artinya kita formulator saja, kita harus selektif lah gitu, harus selektif. Dari formulator juga bisa, dari tetangga atau tokoh tani juga.
Dalam keluarga biasanya kebutuhan anak sih yang kuliah. Biasanya pas harga lagi murah, tadinya anak kosan habis, misalkan kontrakan. Terus semesteran harus bayar langsung. Nah itu.
Kita itu sekarang tuh tanahnya udah tergerus. Ya oleh pabrik-pabrik. Saking menyempit lahan gitu. Ya otomatis si harga lahan meningkat drastis.
Saya bisa mengantarkan anak-anak saya ke jenjang pendidikan yang lebih tinggi, bisa sukses, bisa menghidupi dirinya masing-masing aja.
Nggak ada ya? Kenapa, Bu?
Bahkan kalau bisa mah bisa nambah, ya nanti bisa ngewarisin lagi ke anak, cucu.
Ya kalau untuk petani kan tidak ada pensiunnya. Ya kalau bisa memperluas lahan bukan untuk dijual.
Thank you. So as you think of your solutions, and I hope that you will all sign up for this hackathon, please put those farmers at the heart of whatever digital solution you're planning to address. And if we can help you with any of the questions you might have later this evening, or even as you during the hackathon, will be available for that. But we look forward to, and we hope that we thank you for your commitment to spend your time in such a noble cause. And I think the farmers that you saw tonight and everyone else that we work with will be very pleased, and thank you for your contribution. Good night.
The hackathon is made possible by 4 fantastic partners who've joined with Grow Asia to collaborate with one another in enabling the hackathon, represented by our panel here today, so thank you. One thing I didn't mention to you before is the support that's available as you think through your solution. So maybe you look at those challenge statements and you think, I'm not actually quite sure where I'd start, or I don't really understand enough about farming, or I don't really understand enough about the lives of smallholders to come up with something meaningful. We will provide you with lots of support to ensure that your creativity, that your new ideas can be supported by sound advice and some help. We're going to bring some farmers here, farmers like you saw on that screen. We're going to have 5 farmers here in Singapore, some rice farmers, some palm oil farmers, to help you design a solution that really meets their needs. We're going to have some subject matter experts from these companies and elsewhere that can help you really understand agriculture. And we're going to have some mentors that can help you build your business model, build any finance plans, or really build up your idea and strengthen that. So you'll get lots of support, don't worry. They are big challenges, they're complex, but they do need new thinking. So really appreciate your input, and there's lots of support available. I'm going to ask Cheng Boon to start us off from Enterprise SG, briefly to introduce yourself. But why are you excited about the hackathon? Why are you here? Why is Enterprise SG involved in the hackathon?
Okay, sure. Good evening. There's a very packed questions, so I'll break it down. So I'm Cheng Boon. I'm from Enterprise Singapore. I take care of the water and environment team. We are part of the bigger urban solutions team. So really, when I was getting introduced to Paul and understanding this hackathon, I was thinking this is really a good nexus because, the world is getting more and more connected. And I think there's a lot of connection between what we can do in the water environment space and the farming space. For one, right, water is a very, very big element in agriculture. I was just preparing for this. I read some statistics. So I learned that by 2030, do you know that 50% of the world population are going to live in water-stressed environments or water-stressed land masses? And do you know that actually agriculture activities take up 70% of the water usage in the world, right? So definitely that tells us how important the usage of water is in agriculture. And I think if you look at the smallholder farmers, you think about their livelihood, it's not easy, and they need to make their business and their livelihood as sustainable. In this sense, sustainable for me means they're able to do their business for many, many years to go, right? In the long term. So if they're not able to irrigate properly, not able to ration the use of water smartly, I think, their business lifespan is going to get a lot shorter. So that was the starting point that I look at this problem statement and the relevance of what the work that my team do with the hackathon. Then what does Enterprise Singapore do? So Enterprise Singapore, we take care of Singapore enterprises. We make sure that they can grow and they get core capabilities that they can then address problem statements both Singapore, and we export that out and help the regional development. And I think increasingly, we know that in Singapore, right, the relevance of farming is a lot for right now, urban farming space. But we want our companies to look beyond that, right? So if you are a water company providing water systems, circulating water systems in the urban farm, you need to know that actually there's very limited things you can do here. But why don't you take a look outside? And people need your help. People need your help to become able to use the water resource, such a scarce resource, a lot more intelligently and smartly. So that's what we wanted to do. But there's a problem. I love the companies I work with. But if I may be really honest, I think a lot of them are still looking a little bit at the hardware part of thing, right? So it's okay, we've got a few years ago, I think the buzz was drip tech, right? So the water drips so that it's a lot smarter because then it doesn't waste the water. It's a lot more conserved and then, they just drip at the right time. But increasingly, so what's the digital model we need, right? To really apply water and if you understand the other data, right? So maybe it's humidity, maybe it's temperature, maybe it's timing, maybe it's soil conditions, and then you get water to the right place at the right time. You're actually using the water resource much more intelligently. So I don't think a lot of water companies are looking at that right now. So if the water companies step up and want to innovate, I think they will need to meet young people, maybe who are into data mining, digital skills and stuff. So I think the collaboration that can come out of it is really exciting. So I have traditional water companies that know very limited about small farmer, their way of using water, and then they try to hack that data and then know about that and work with data scientists to apply that. I think that is exciting. Conversely, for data scientists who are actually very good at mining data and know that, okay, if farmers use water for this, and that, we need to have an algorithm that does this, and that. And they work with a water company to really develop a solution that's applicable to the smallholder farmers. I think that's a marriage of wonderful solutions. And then I'm happy that my environment and water pieces are taken care of in the regional smallholder farm community. And that's what I hope we can achieve together in this hackathon.
Terrific. Thank you. And a really meaningful challenge. Deepak, we all know the Ferrero products, your famous chocolate products. Tell us why you're here at a hackathon. How did you come to support what's happening?
Right. Thanks everyone for being here and for Grow Asia and the other partners. Ferrero is an Italian confectionery. Those of you who have tasted Nutella, Ferrero Rocher, Kinder, so that's us making those products for you. And there's a lot of Asian ingredients, including smallholders there, such as palm. So I think it's relevant for us to be here. Briefly about the team that I belong to, we belong to an open innovation team, which by design looks externally for inspirations to solve complex challenges. That's typically beyond our remit as a business in the value chain. So we are a brand that buys ingredients from large suppliers or small farmers and then makes delicious products out of it. But today, looking at the complexity of the agri-tech, but also the opportunity of technology, how do we find the right partnership model, even if we knew the value that Ferrero can bring to the consumer in being a responsible brand? How do we work upstream with partnerships to find the right technologies for the right problems? I guess that's what excites us to be part of this hackathon. And I think with Grow Asia, it's the farmer-centered needs and problem solving. I think that's what excites us.
Cheers, thank you. Farah, from Corteva's point of view, what excites you about these fantastic people that we've got here today and the hackathon process?
So firstly, thank you again for spending Tuesday with us. I hope by now some of you are already bubbling with excitement to sign up. Yes? No? It is a tough crowd. Of course. Okay. So I want to actually say first personally, because you've heard all about Corteva, right? And who we are. Personally, why am I invested in this? So I didn't grow up in agriculture. I started joining the agriculture industry about 3 years back. And my first visit was to a farm in Andhra Pradesh. And there, I definitely see how enabling technologies, right, be it the latest seed technologies or crop protection technologies or digital technologies, can transform the life of these farmers. It brings whole villages from poverty to prosperity. So when you think about this hackathon, please think about that. Some of your technologies might actually bring people from poverty to prosperity. So I'll give another example. You saw 71 million farmers Oracle ASEAN. 90% of them are smallholder farmers. That means they have only less than 2 hectares. 2 hectares. In a small farm like that, getting a good harvest versus not getting a good harvest in a season can mean the difference of thinking whether I can feed my people, my children that season, or if they're able to do more consistent, get more yield consistently and sustainably within 4 or 5 seasons, they can start to think about, where do I send my daughter to school, right? Can I expand my land and actually, get more hectares, get more, profitability? So in Corteva, farmers are at the heart of everything that we do. We believe that smarter farmers, more enabled farmers, successful farmers, profitable farmers is not only good for him or her, but good for you and me, because that means food security, and it's good for the industry growth overall, because it's good for agriculture. Okay? So what is it that they need for them to be enabled, for them to be profitable, for them to be successful? 3 things. Okay? They need access to know-how. They need access to the latest technology, application technology, and they need access to financing and market. Okay, so those are the 3 things. Where do you play the role? Right now, if you're a smallholder farmers, it's very difficult. They don't have a finance degree, do they? They don't count what's their inputs and what's their outputs and estimate and forecast how much revenue they'll be getting. But hey, with your help, maybe they can. Maybe there is a way to actually teach them farmers financing or economics. So that's one. If you have a smallhold farmers versus our US customer with the big farmers where everything is digitalized with drones and everything like that, right? With big tractors. Mechanization becomes so difficult, isn't it, when you only have 1 or 2 hectares? But hey, maybe with your help, we can actually get some of the customized application technology, mechanization to actually help those smallholder farmers so they can actually produce more with less, right? Less water, less resource, less labor, right? Make more money, be more productive, right? And then access to market. Every time I go to a farmers meeting, they keep saying, can you just buy our product from Mars? But we can't do it all on our own. We need partners like MUFG, like Ferrero, like the Singapore government. We need partners. We need all of you to join in. We need innovative business model. Innovative business model that can link the smallholder farmers to the buyers, link these smallholder farmers to get access to formal financing, right? And link these smallholder farmers to the application technology or the knowledge so they can actually, again, produce more yield sustainably season after season. So they can be profitable, successful, and we can actually all benefit from it. So I hope that after this session, all of you join us, because it's a really worthwhile cause, not just because of the hackathon and the prize, but because, you can be a part of actually bringing a whole entire village from poverty to prosperity.
Shuhang, MUFG is a very significant banking conglomerate right across Asia. How did you come to be involved in smallholder agriculture and specifically in the open innovation and the hackathon process?
Hi everyone, Shuhang here. Has anyone heard of MUFG? Okay, that's not too bad, actually. So let me introduce MUFG for a start. We are actually the 5th largest bank by asset globally. We are not very good at speaking out, but yet at the same time, we are very globally represented across the world. So the first 4 banks, just for information, are Chinese banks, and we're the 5th largest, so it tells you something about it, right? Now, the reason why we are here today and feel very excited is because, if you look at traditional banking, we have always looked at trying to be the bank for many sectors, but that is evolving through digital transformation. And that's where I come from, incidentally, the Digital Transformation Division. And it's becoming very, very key to us to realize, in fact, that actually to address certain pain points in the sector, we have to collaborate. And on this panel, you are actually seeing a bunch of people who are very keen to look into how we can solve real problems together for the farmers. Now, first thing first, do we actually, as a bank, know what are the real problems to solve? Categorically, we don't. Why? Because the problem is so complex. In order to solve the problem, you must know what the problem is in the first place, to solve that problem comprehensively. And therefore, I'm pretty excited today, not just because we're all partnering and all that, we are big brands and we got our big ideas, but also to partner you guys, right? To say, hey guys, you are able to move fast. We as a bank, although big, is trying to move fast, but I think we can move faster with you to solve those problems. So essentially, I think I would say that even 3 years back, compared to now, things are not quite possible, but today it's a lot more possible because we can through digital. Open source, technology that's 5G, pushing forward in terms of digital reach, connectivity. All that is just going to set the stage for the next 5-10 years for banking to be available to the sector out there, be it farming. I think the main thing for banks, which I have asked of you to think about, is help us to think differently, right? Think differently. When we look at a farmer, I'll give you an example. When we look at a farmer, we think of, wow, scary, micro-inclusion, that kind of stuff, right? So that all the banks will step back. But the reality is this, right? When you look at trade finance, which is very well established within banking, is essentially a very low risk, low default rate business for banks. And in this case, I would propose to you, and you can think about it, is that what farmers are doing on a daily basis is trade. And for us, is to empower that trade with financing. So it's micro trade financing, not so much micro inclusion of financial or CSR and so on and so forth. So think about that. That requires you to think about helping us, like I said, to change our mindset, right, through digital, show us the model, give us a way to think about how we banks can come in as a multi-bank solution. And then at the end of the day, we can empower everybody, including our constituent partners, as well as the farming ecosystem. All right? That's my hope. And I'm very excited because, in short, we can. We couldn't before. Today, we can. All right?
Fantastic. Thank you. Deepak, I want to jump over to you for a minute. Sell these people on this traceability, on this tagging challenge. You've come to us and you've said this is something that Ferrero want to solve. This is something that you want some creative ideas around. Why did you pick that challenge, and why is it an important one for these bright people here to solve?
Right, thanks, Paul. So maybe can I have a show of hands? How many of you today think about when you go for shopping for yourself or your family, you want to understand what exactly are you buying and how it's being produced? Maybe show of hands? So I think a nascent but emerging category, let's say. So I guess a large part of us would think it's important to know what we're eating from not only safety and quality, but also what does it mean for the environment, right? How do we think as not just consumers, but also think as responsible citizens of the earth? I think has been alluded to by Corteva and others. So I guess just to give you a backdrop on the particular challenge we arrived upon, Ferrero is among the leading brands that is very responsible in terms of our sourcing and supply base, but also in production and consumer education. What do I mean by that with regards to palm is that we are among the proponents of this responsible sourcing of palm oil initiative, where we try to certify the whole value chain to adhere to a set of agreed upon practice that is a sustainable means of producing palm, which then is used by brands like us to make products, right? Now, that's worked very well, and I think we want to continue building upon that initiatives. But if you look at what it actually solves for, it's a certification. It's saying that person X is great because we believe so, right? I think in the world of data and digital, I think we can do better than that. And also what it doesn't do very well, perhaps, is validate the actual physical commodity that is being traded, right? So certification is for partners in the value chain and transactions, perhaps, that can be digitized, but it doesn't actually connect the actual physical commodity that is a palm fruit branch at the mill that becomes an oil in the refinery and a Nutella or a Ferrero Rocher in your hands in the market. So I guess this is where we said there is an opportunity here for us to sort of look outside our usual window and say, how do we think about this broadly beyond just Ferrero, right? So we wanted to do some sourcing or ideating of ideas, and we hit upon some interesting startups globally where we see increasingly edible tags are being added to commodities, right? So DNA-based tagging is one example. I wouldn't certainly restrict you to that. I think you're very well welcome to go beyond that. I think the need here is to say, how do you think of a QR code that is embedded in your food? I think that's kind of the analogy that I'd like to throw at, right? We have QR codes that sit on packaging. We have QR codes that sit on maybe shelves, right? How do you think of a QR code for the actual product? Because it's very easy to slip in a different product in the same package, and you'll never know, right? So that's the challenge with palm, right? So we wanted to say, how do you make the traceability linked to the actual physical commodity? So this is from a Ferrero perspective, of course, and as I think all of us agree here, and hopefully there, that it's beyond just one entity. It's a collective initiative. It's an ecosystem approach that needs a change, right? So I think what we decided is to say, how do we think of the farmer perspective? What are the farmers trying to understand? What are their needs from access to finance and crop inputs, but also access to education and social empowerment? How do we use this tagging as an opportunity to qualify or validate the person who is farming and also his product? So he can probably hedge that for funds, he can hedge that for crop inputs, or he can even go to startups and say, this is my data set, what can you do for me, right? So the tagging is just a hook to solve their needs as their everyday goes about, and how that connects eventually to the supply chain or the value chain. I think that's probably what we would encourage, and that's what excites us. I think it's essentially business model innovation, to put it another way. So I think that's what we as Ferrero would like to see, hopefully some of you or all of you think about, and I think we're all of us here trying to take that shared journey forward.
Terrific. So we've heard from Cheng Boon about the importance of water, about the crisis that we face, and we can view it as a crisis or we can view it as an opportunity. And this hackathon's about viewing it as an opportunity. How do we allow smallholder farmers to use their water more productively and efficiently? We've heard from Deepak about traceability and edible 3D barcodes, and the possibility of basically tagging that product right at the origin and right through the value chain. Really cool stuff. Farah, when we came to Corteva and pitched the idea of a hackathon, I thought you might come to us and say, give us some technology to help us sell our products to farmers. But you've turned it around and you've said you're really interested in that cash flow issue and helping farmers map their cash flow, understand the way that their business operates. Why is that the best challenge for these people to invest their time in?
So firstly, in case you didn't catch before, smart farmers are actually good for Corteva and good for all of us. Okay, because smart farmers know that they have to buy the highest and best technology. Why? So like Anita said, they can increase their yield from 1 kg per hectare to just say 1 ton to 5 ton per hectare, right? So I'll give you a little bit of a background. Picking the right seed and or crop protection solutions technology can increase a farmer's yield 4x. Imagine that. So I'm not joking when the difference is between do I have enough to eat or can I expand my business and my land? Okay. Now, what's the issue? The issue a little bit is that I keep telling the smallholder farmers, you have to please take a look at your farm like a little shop, Please, write down what are your inputs and, plan ahead when to sell, how much to sell, etc. like that. What kind of loan should you be taking? What kind of interest are you paying? But all of these are, very, very difficult for them to actually, plan, and do themselves. So that requires education, right? So that's basically where the innovative digital applications can actually really help. So the way that farmers, usually farming is a family business. So there's a wife and a husband. And usually what happens is that the way they do it is that instead of actually planning and saying, okay, how much can I maximize out of this plot of land? What they do is they say, this is how much money, cash I have. They pay their for food first. So the wife usually calculates and say, okay, I'm gonna actually set aside a percentage for food, and then I set aside a percentage for my kids' schooling fees, and then whatever is left over is then given to the father, to the husband, to actually then buy all of the input materials, etc., like that. And they then end up getting into loan from non-official creditors that charge them on arms and legs, to actually, finance for the season. When in actuality, if they just do a calculation, what they probably would do is the other way around. They would probably actually really reserve enough sufficient fund to, how much they would invest to get the best yield. And within 1 season or 2 seasons, they can really turn around their life instead of getting into the poverty trap. Okay? So again, smart farmers is good for us as a business, and it's good for us as a society and community for food security. So, and you guys have the opportunity to make smart farmers by putting together, please, an application, any kind of innovative idea to make it easy for them to understand how they manage their farm, like an enterprise, like a little shop, to understand the financing side and the economic sides, of their farm.
Thank you. That's a really exciting challenge. Xu Hang, when we put the challenge statement together around finance, you were keen on including the intermediary there. You wanted to develop financing solutions that involved either the retailer or the trader into that financing deal, into that financing platform. Why is the intermediary there? Why are you looking for innovations, particularly around the roles of intermediaries as avenues for finance to farmers?
I alluded to it before. When I looked at a farmer, he doesn't exist in isolation out in the open space and not dealing with people around him, right? And you will soon realize that actually there are a lot of intermediaries around him, which may touch him in terms of his business and also as a consumer, right? So I would broadly categorize these guys as intermediaries, right? Now, the first thing first is I want to force a rethink in terms of just that kind of maybe slightly narrow view into access to resources, access to funding to be enabled digitally, blah, 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 for that farmer. Why can't we think about his journey as a farmer and a consumer? You think about money. When I earn money from my whatever job, I have a day job in MUFG. The reason why I'm able to live as a consumer is because I can spend the money. What do? I actually go to an ATM, withdraw cash, and I spend it. Now, the retail shops around me are also intermediaries for me to spend the money. So it gives me a sense of digital. So I want to challenge you to think about what value and what sort of digital, or I would say job transformation, you can bring to the table for those guys surrounding that farmer too. So an agent today, sub-agent may be just selling fertilizers, but can you think of logistics or something that allows him to value add as an intermediary? And for that shop, that retail shop that sells him sundry goods, can you offer a cash out point for that particular entity that's already there to add value to him in a financial sense? So I think the access to finance must be coupled with a rethink around what all these intermediaries mean to that farmer consumer, and his family. So broaden your thinking, rethink, and challenge the basic understanding, maybe sometimes in the context of what you do on a daily basis, right? And that's my ask, essentially to force myself to rethink as well, right? Okay?
Cheers, thank you. And that's a great example of the importance of opening innovation out to multiple people and to new thinking. So thank you. So you've heard that these challenge statements are real for these businesses, that they're looking for solutions. But I want to throw the challenge out to our partners. If these creative people come up with a great idea that solves this challenge, how can you support them to make that idea real and to take it not just into a small trial, but actually help these innovators scale their idea? Chengbin first, what sort of role can Enterprise SG play in terms of helping these innovators take their idea into the field?
Right, I'll go through the two broad ways. I think the first thing we look at is for existing companies or for companies who come together to co-innovate, right? So there is an element of new capabilities, building new technology development. So to do that, there might be some costs involved. And I think from a government standpoint, as long as you're creating new technologies and new capabilities for either the company or for a technology that can be deployed, there'll be schemes that we can come in to support you in terms of getting some of this developments done. I think that's just actually the starting point. I think what we really want to look is how from here we deploy it to a much bigger area. And obviously through the partners, we have access to potential farmers who can deploy and to get in touch with the smallholder farmers. But beyond that, so Enterprise Singapore has 36 offices overseas. So I think obviously we want to solve the problem and the challenge for the regional countries first. In this case, I think very heavily on Indonesia. But as we can scale as a business, scalability is important. And you want to also go beyond very limited markets. So I think being able to bring it overseas is the additional value we can bring beyond the schemes and the incentives we can provide for you.
Fantastic. So there we have it, an offer. If you've got a right idea, if you're ready to take it to scale, there are grant schemes available through Enterprise SG. There's a network of offices that can support deployment. Deepak, you've told us the traceability challenge is an important one to solve. The right idea comes forward out of the hackathon. How can you take that forward?
Right. I think the obvious one is the buy side, right? As a brand that responsibly sources palm in this case for us, we can provide the buy-side perspective, not only as what would be ideal from a quality and sustainable reporting perspective, but also actually provide that minimum order quantity, MOQ, to say we would like to source a few tons of smallholder produce given it meets XYZ criteria. I think we can provide that real proposition. I think from an innovation perspective, we as a team have 3 hubs globally. The Singapore hub is where I'm based, looking at Asia. We have our counterparts in Europe and US as well. So as with any innovation, sometimes you need an assortment of solutions to then come together. So we, through these hubs, have an extensive network of other co-innovators or access to expertise in technology. So we could potentially sort of enable better the ideas that come through, either existing or new. And I think lastly, of course, support in terms of finance, in terms of the next obvious step, which is a POC. Between the panelists here, I think our companies, but to go beyond that, to go beyond the proof of concept to a larger scale pilot, we can open access to our business partners or strategic partners in the palm supply chain to then actually scale through and solve for adoption and continued use of a given technology.
Yeah, fantastic, and a great opportunity to develop a proof of concept with Ferrero, but as you say, that you've got the scale and the reach to go beyond a proof of concept to be able to really take something forward. Farah, for Corteva, what can you put on the table to excite these innovators to take their idea forward from the hackathon?
So we are currently touching a lot of farmers directly in our engagements, education in the field all across ASEAN. So in Indonesia alone, for example, we serve more than 7.5 million farmers per year. And we touch directly in our education activities about 500,000 farmers per year. So we are actually already putting as part of our education farmers finance or farmers economics education. We're trying to simplify it as much as we can. So if we actually have a solution, basically we will work together with you to scale it up, obviously fund it, and then also you can work directly alongside our team. We even have a space in our office here, for you to actually sit in, and as you actually develop your solutions next. So that's what we have to offer.
Fantastic. And I've been out to the Corteva office and seen these desks available for startups and innovators that want to work with Corteva. A great offer. Shuheng, how does your bank work with innovators? How do you partner with people with a new idea that comes out of this hackathon?
Yeah. Okay, at a very basic level, we connect you to the realities on the ground. What do I mean by that? Banking regulations, access to regulators and all that. I think those are very good guideposts that we can offer as on advisory and also on a connection base, where you will be very, very surprised how valuable that is. That's one. I would say access to reality. Of course, you look at me, you will be like, oh yeah, where's the money, right? So definitely there'll be some support, right? But definitely, I don't know, I wouldn't want to compare, but definitely we'll be very keen to support the pilots moving forward, right? And connection to VCs as well, based on our network, is something that's interesting for us to, and we already have a good network. I guess last but not least, I think I would say we do have banking infrastructures within certain countries where if you want to, say, do actual payments and all that, which often overlooked, right? How you can have an adjacency between what you're building as a digital platform to connect with a banking infrastructure, which are by no means easy to build, but it can help you accelerate your ability to, offer more services to the market, right? I think these are the things.
Fantastic. And I love the idea across this panel here. We've got partners that you don't even just have to work with one of these partners. There are actually multiple angles to the way these problems are solved and multiple different partners here that can work with you. Derek, do we have some time to take some questions from the floor? Fantastic, great. Have we got a roving mic? So just raise your hand if you've got any questions for any of our panelists. If it's a question about process in terms of how the hackathon comes together and the application and the timing, Derek will cover that in a moment. But on broader questions around the challenges and the corporate partnerships?
Hi, my name is Ndibisi Eze. It's a great pleasure to actually be here and a great panel. I have a question for Deepak about Ferrero. You talked about the end product and being able to tag and all that, and making sure that people are able to have traceability on the product. But you didn't say much about the raw materials getting into the door before it gets to your factory. Is there also a strategy for Ferrero to be able to trace the raw materials as they come in from the farmers themselves?
Right, thanks for your question. So I think that's probably where we see the value of tagging, because it's within the physical commodity that gets transacted through the different value chain partners. So you don't have to build a new process or a new framework to then test and ask if this is really what you're paying for. But I guess it's embedded within as a physical commodity, and then you could just take a sample of the real product and do a quick analytical method to say, this is the produce which complies to certain sustainability and quality mandates, that is also sourced from a smallholder, and it supports our inclusive supply chain model. But also from an innovation perspective, I think it also readily blends in with the existing digital framework. So for example, in Palm, I think there is a platform called Palm Trace, which actually records today real time all the transactions at scale that happens from a farmer to a mill to a refinery and then to a purchaser eventually. I think that data is available. Imagine the power of a physical tag that embeds within actually the commodity. How could you think of ways of linking this physical tag and the reads and that information to all this digital transaction that's already happening with the large players, but also building a similar data framework for a smallholder situation? And I think that's the real connection that brings new business models to the fore, be it crop inputs, finance, or access to the right price, access to the right markets.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, I'm not sure if my question is too specific, but I have two questions. Number one, actually, my boss here, my part-time boss, we are coincidentally, we are going to support a hackathon to design drones in Cambodia. The design workshop is going to be next week, actually 8 and 9. Two engineers are going up to talk to them. Assuming that there are some positive outcomes from there. Because I know that you are only launching this in Indonesia and Singapore. Are you only looking at the design and the development to be only in Indonesia and Singapore? What if the team is in Cambodia? Is that also a possibility? So I see a lot of nods. And second question, I have also been working with shrimp farmers in Rakhine State, and predominantly with existing farmers from Thailand and Malaysia wanting to revamp or restart the shrimp industry in Rakhine State, which has collapsed about 10 years ago. And one of the, besides trying to do tech transfer, another thing which we were trying to look at is also financial side, trying to support them. Just wanted to know if Myanmar is also a market that you are looking at, and to what extent, because Rakhine is a very challenging context, and July is quite a short timeline. Are you just looking at a concept, a model, which we still need to go out to test a lot, or are you looking at something really, really tangible? Yeah.
I might answer those. In terms of from where teams can come to compete in the events, you can come from anywhere on the globe. And you will need to come, though, to either Singapore or Jakarta for the Hackathon weekend. So you need to be here during the Hackathon weekend, but we'll support you in the lead up to that remotely is absolutely fine. So anybody's welcome, but they do need to come into these cities. In terms of the crop focus, I would encourage you as teams to develop your solution for rice or for palm. That doesn't mean you might have a great solution that can be scaled in all sorts of other different directions, but we are trying to anchor these challenge statements around rice and around palm just to kind of give that whole hackathon a little bit of direction and focus, and we can give you information around those two crops. In terms of, are these technologies applicable in Cambodia? Are they applicable in Myanmar? Of course, absolutely. And Grow Asia works in all of those countries and is interested in taking these technologies. And many of the businesses here work in those countries as well. Again, these hackathon challenges are anchored in Indonesia. They're anchored in the Indonesian context to, again, give you as teams a specific area that you can build a solution around. Again, can the idea be taken forward in Cambodia or Myanmar? Yeah, why not? And again, these businesses often work in those countries. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Wani. So I've been to other hackathons before that want to solve problems for rural areas. Even though I really feel for those people, I don't live in that situation. I can't feel their problem. So if I want to build like a technology solution for those people, I don't feel their problem. No, I just wanted to know like what basic assumption of their technology capabilities do they have, or who am I actually building stuff for? That kind of.
We'll give you some information around smartphone adoption, digital literacy, but we'll also bring some farmers in here. So you'll have access to 5 farmers. Corteva's providing some farmer profiles. That'll give you a sense of the technology that the farmer profiles have, and then we'll have real people here that you can talk to as well.
Okay, so I can't start thinking about stuff right now until I see actual people.
There will be some pre-read available that has got some information around adoption rates in the sort of areas. Do people own a 2G phone, a 3G phone? What do they use it for? The GSMA is a global sort of expert on the adoption of mobiles, and we've got some reports from them that should be able to help you. And you can talk to people before the hackathon weekend. If you want to talk to one of our partners, if you want to talk to Grow Asia, start to get some ideas, hone your thinking a little bit, we're happy to do that.
Just to quickly add to what Paul has said, there's some pre-reads that are really listed in the website itself. And so, the smallholder farmers is not a new topic. There's a lot of material, there's a lot of information that's out there. There are a lot of papers that you can read as well. But, having the farmers there clearly will bring it to life, but that's only available at the hackathon stage. So for now, as you come, it's what will require you to submit is as an application to the hackathon is tell us about the concept that you are thinking of, right? So, for that, we do encourage you to do a little bit of reading on your own.
Derek, do we want one more question or we wrap up? Maybe one more question. Yeah, what's time for one more?
Hello, my name is Felipe. I am from South America. I am from Ecuador. So my question is, could you explain me a little bit more about the chemicals? Because I belong to indigenous community from Ecuador. So the indigenous people, not only in my country, in Peru and Bolivia and Ecuador, they are opposite to the technology. But my question is, how can I explain how I can encourage them to use technology, because they have fear for the chemicals. So how I can explain them? Can you give me more details about the chemical use, please?
I think that's one for you, Shuhan. Yeah?
You don't want to. So I think the way that we have to do it is that we need to firstly highlight within one planting season, and you will get all of this information. What are the key diseases and insects and weeds that are actually really limiting the yield of the farmers, right? So that's the first. And at what stage of the growing stage of the plant, whether it be rice or corn or palm. And then based on that, what is it that the right chemical that is the most efficient, effective, and safe for the environment that can be used, for that particular stage? And in addition to that, how does the farmer can spray in a way that is safe for him and the environment around him? So when I mentioned that we do farmers education, across ASEAN, that's basically what we teach the farmers. So that's basically, because you're right, actually, it's not good just to actually go out there. We've been to some of the farmers in Myanmar who actually have, insects issues, and they're spraying disease control and bad quality disease control that is not even good for the environment for themselves, and not actually bearing any fruits for their yield. So it's through education.
Yeah, so we're going to try and get you as close as we can to this whole idea of human-centered design, trying to develop technologies that address real needs on the ground through those subject matter experts, through those farmers, through your pre-reading. We all know that technologies that are designed in the clouds and conceptual ideas are not what we're looking for, and we are going to try and work as hard as we can to give you as much on-the-ground context as possible.
Thank you, panel. Please join me to thank Shu Heng for MFG, Farah, Deepak, and Chingbun, and of course, Paul. So I'm sure the panelists, you stick around for a little bit so you can ask more questions privately if you like to, and of course, meet them at the hackathon as well. Thank you, panel. Thank you. So I just want to recap the challenge process, which I think some of you would have seen on the website. Very quickly, the timeline, the applications for the hackathon actually open today. So this is actually a two-step process. The first thing to do is to apply, for you to apply. By the 21st of June, make a submission to tell us that you actually want to participate in the hackathon. What's your team look like, and what is the concept that you're thinking of working on. From there, we'll shortlist 15 from Singapore, and we'll invite you to the hackathon 6th to 7th of July. And at the end of the hackathon, we'll shortlist the top 5. We'll help you with the pitch clinics. And then we go on the pitch day on the 22nd of July. Earlier on, I mentioned that there's actually an Indonesian component as well. So this process, there's a parallel process in Indonesia. So we'll also have a shortlisting of the top 15, go into Jakarta Hackathon the week before the Singapore Hackathon, and then we all converge into the pitch day. Now, for the application, recap again, deadline, I'll keep reminding you guys. It's 21st of June, 6 p.m. To apply, go to the website, which is growasiahackathon.com. Download the template, fill out the template. It's a very simple template. It's nothing complicated. We don't want you to spend too much time on it as well. And then submit it by sending us an email. So all this information is going to be sent to you by email tomorrow. So please continue to look out for the emails from me, from my team. All right? The shortlisting criteria. So if you recall, we're going to gather all the applications for the hackathon. We're going to shortlist about 15 teams. This is the shortlisting criteria. I won't read every single one of these points. Again, all this information is available on the website. But basically, we're looking for three things. Number one is, have you understood the problem that you're trying to solve? Now, there are some concerns that we're here sitting in Singapore. It's a very different environment from the smallholder context, but there's a lot of materials that's out there. We just want you to show some empathy for the problem. In terms of the concept, notice we used to call it concept. We're not asking you to present the actual solution, because what we want you to do is to tell us broadly what you intend to do and what you would like to do and what your approach is. And if we like that, we invite you to come to the hackathon, where you can actually work with actual farmers as well as the mentors, the expert mentors that we're going to get at the hackathon to help you finesse that. Lastly, team credentials. Tell us a little bit more about you and your team, what sort of skills, what sort of experience that you might have that's relevant to this particular solution or the concept that you are going to build. Prizes, $10,000 for the first prize. Well, I think that deserves an applause. Yeah. that actually buys a smallholder farmer a lot of stuff. So appreciate this. Thanks to our partners, we're able to offer something pretty generous as a prize. But as you've heard the partners talk about this, the big prize is actually the opportunity to take your solution further. They are ready to support you, and they are there, the hackathon, to support you, and they are going to be supporting you after this. So the hackathon really is the start of the journey. So once again, recap. Deadline for application is 21st of June, which is about 2.5 weeks from now. Actually 3.5 weeks from now. Then go to the website, look at the application template. It's a very simple form to fill in and submit to us. Please continue to look out for our emails. We'll send you reminders, and the materials actually, the Corteva slides from tonight is actually already available on the website, and together with a list of pre-reads that we gathered from the partners as well as Grow Asia. So have a look at that, and I think the partners are still here. I'm sure some of you have some questions. We're too shy to ask just now, so you might actually want to ask them. And lastly, just one quick shout out for those who are not quite in the team, still trying to find some people in the team. Please stay behind, have a chat with people around here, or come up to us and make yourself known so that we can actually help you look out for team members as well. So with that, thank you very much for spending the Tuesday night with us. We hope to see you at a hackathon.